Good evening, I'm Yochanan El Rome, and this is IBA News coming to you from Jerusalem. U.S. Special Envoy George Mitchell is on his way back to Washington at this hour, following the first substantive round of indirect peace talks between Israel and the Palestinians. We go to details live now to our Tel Aviv studio and join IBA's diplomatic correspondent, Leah Zender. Good evening, Leah.
Yes, hi, Yochanan. Well, as you say, Senator Mitchell flew back to Washington immediately after this morning's meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Those talks went way over schedule, lasting for over 3 hours. Not a word about their contents from official Israeli or U.S. sources, but reportedly, I have no official confirmation of this, Israel did present the package of goodwill gestures toward the Palestinians worked up by Defense Minister Ehud Barak. These include the transfer of additional territory to Palestinian security control, the release of Palestinian prisoners, enabling the construction of a new highway linking Ramallah with a new Palestinian town planned to its north, and dismantling IDF roadblocks. In return, Israel is demanding that the Palestinians stop their incitement against Israel in their schools, their media, and in mosques. This Israeli demand goes all the way back to the Oslo Accords and has never ever been implemented. In addition, Israel is calling on the PA to rescind its boycott of Israeli produce originating in West Bank settlements. Israeli sources say that the Prime Minister and Defence Minister, with whom Mitchell met on Tuesday, stressed the need to move to direct talks with the Palestinians as soon as possible. Yesterday, and we're looking at those pictures now, Mitchell was in Ramallah for talks with PA President Mahmoud Abbas. Afterwards, PA negotiator Saeb Erekat said he hopes by the end of 4 months of proximity talks, Israel will agree to a Palestinian state within the 1967 borders. The Palestinians also gave Mitchell a package not of gestures, but of complaints about what they said were provocative Israeli statements and acts by IDF troops in the Palestinian territories. Israeli officials are saying they hope these complaints are not a pretext for undermining the proximity talks. And meanwhile, the intrepid George Mitchell will now report back to the US President and is expected back here in 2 or 3 weeks' time. Back to you, Yochanan, in Jerusalem.
And thanks to our diplomatic correspondent, Leah Zender. In other news, arrested following the abduction of IDF soldier Gilad Shalit, top Hamas commander Mohammed Abu Tir was released today from an Israeli prison after completing a 4-year sentence for association with a terrorist group. Activists working to secure Shalit's freedom dismissed Abu Tir's release as absurd. We get more in this report.
After his release from Nafka prison, Mohammed Abu Tir received a festive and warm welcome from family and friends in the village of Subahar, adjacent to Jerusalem. He told reporters that he has paid a hefty price for being born a political man, but that now he is happy. The 59-year-old spent an accumulated 25 years in Israeli jails on terrorism-related charges, including a 7-year stint after attempting to poison Israel's water supply while the head of the Hamas military wing is Adin al-Qassam brigades. He was then recruited by current Gaza Prime Minister Ismail Haniyeh and appointed number 2 on the Hamas political list during the 2006 Palestinian parliamentary elections. Abu Tir, who has publicly stated that he dyes his beard bright orange, as it was the practice of the Prophet Muhammad, today told reporters that he is sorry that Gilad Shalit remains in captivity because no one, himself included, enjoys captivity. He then firmly placed blame for the collapse of a prisoner exchange deal for Shalit on the government of Israel. This is Aaron Viner for IBA News.
Speaking from Italy during a joint press conference with Italian Premier Silvio Berlusconi, Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak cautioned Israel to avoid stalling tactics during peace talks with the PA. The 81-year-old Egyptian leader said doing so would result in an increase of terrorism, not only in Arab and Middle Eastern countries, but all over the world. Jerusalem Mayor Nir Barkat has come up with a plan for dealing with the building permits in the controversial Silwan neighborhood in eastern Jerusalem. However, Barkat told the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs today that he and the government do not yet see eye to eye on the matter.
That little hill of Silwan, 659 buildings, 2 of them are Jewish. One of them is Bet Yonatan. When I approached the situation and I've asked, I'd like to understand the macro picture of the neighborhood. And indeed, by moving from 2 stories to 4 stories, there are only 20 buildings in that neighborhood that are over 4 stories. One of them is Bet Yonatan. And my advice to the government and to the courts is, with your permission, when we're replanning the neighborhood, stop I'd like to get an extension of a year, because we're going to be putting a new plan for the benefit of all of the residents in Silwan. That would be 42 court cases, one of them Jewish, and 41 are of Arab population. And I'm looking for equality under law. And my recommendation to the government is wait with all of them, because once we allow 4 stories, the whole case is different, because the whole court cases are dependent on the fact that you're only allowed to build 2 stories. So now when you're allowed to build 4 stories, most of those cases, most of the Arab cases, are irrelevant. We could actually close the case and give them a permit. And what the second thing I'm saying is that treat all of the buildings over 4 stories the same, including Bet Yonatan. My recommendation would be to shave all of the buildings that are over 4 stories, and Bet Yonatan should be first. This concept is still not accepted in the government for some reason, and I have a debate on this point with the legal system in the country. My feeling is that to go after one building is discriminatory, and my recommendation to the government is to deal all residents, may they be Jewish or non-Jewish, exactly the same. Exactly the same.
Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad's chief of staff said if Israel attacks Iran's nuclear facilities, Iran would retaliate and destroy Israel in less than 10 days' time. His comments came during a political conference in northern Iran. Meanwhile, a defiant Tehran shrugged off the threat of new UN sanctions against its rogue nuclear program, saying sanctions would only harm Western countries. Among other things, the proposed measures would halt Russia's sale of S-300 surface-to-air missiles to the hardline Islamic Republic. The sophisticated anti-aircraft system could potentially endanger the ability of Israel or the United States to carry out military strikes against Iranian targets. Despite its hard-won support for the U.S.-sponsored UN resolution for sanctions against Iran, a diplomatic feud is now brewing between Russia and the European Union over just which measures against the Islamic Republic are now in effect. Moscow is reportedly furious following the recent arrest of several German nationals on charges they acquired technology on Russia's behalf for Iran's Bushehr nuclear reactor. The light water plant was built by Moscow and is due to open in August. The suspects were detained in a German airport and charged with violating the injunction against exporting sensitive dual-use technology to Bushehr. While the first set of UN sanctions passed in 2006 permitted such exports, the European Union's own directives on how to implement the UN measures do not. Moscow has reportedly launched official complaints with the Security Council over the arrests. Returning now to the visit of U.S. Special Middle East Envoy George Mitchell for round 2 of the proximity talks between Israel and the Palestinians. And I'm joined here in the studio by Dan Diker from the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs. Dan is a policy analyst. Dan, good evening. Welcome.
Thank you, Yochanan.
All right, let's talk about Senator Mitchell, the special envoy. He met with Prime Minister Netanyahu today. Does that mean that the proximity talks now are fully underway?
Well, the word fully is certainly up for grabs and is a question. I mean, clearly Envoy Mitchell is shuttling between Ramallah and Jerusalem and trying to do his best. But these talks face a tremendous uphill battle, Yochanan, to really get anywhere. Let's remember that the Palestinians wanted these talks insofar as they dealt with final status issues. Israel had never been interested in these final status issues. They wanted to talk about protocols, terms of reference, in order to build towards a real pathway to progress in talks in the coming 4 or 5 months. But here they are. Israel has agreed to talk about these final status issues. The problem is the Palestinians want to talk borders. Israelis want to talk security. So you have a basic disconnect about the subjects they want to talk about, and it's really going to be up to Envoy Mitchell to try to square the circle on how these difficult talks are going to progress, even from square one.
It sounds like besides being a broker, he also has to serve as a little bit of an arm twister when he is in Ramallah and also when he's in Jerusalem.
Well, that's clear. Let's remember in that context what Chief Negotiator Saab Arikat of the Palestinian Authority said. He said, we're not negotiating with Israel, we're negotiating with the United States. And that really says a lot, because this is the first time since 1993 that the Palestinian Authority and the State of Israel are not really directly talking talking with one another or negotiating with one another. Palestinians are negotiating with the United States. Israel would want to talk to the Palestinian Authority, has actually pleaded publicly with the Palestinian Authority to enter in direct talks, but they're also being forced to talk to the United States. So there's going to be some arm twisting from the U.S. mediator in the United States to try to keep these talks defined as talks as much as possible, to try to make some progress, because the Palestinians are really more on a unilateral track to statehood, either declared or forced through the UN Security Council, and that really leaves Israel in a strange position because Israel wants to have these negotiations. It really remains to be seen what kind of arm twisting has to be done.
President Barack Obama warned recently that both sides would be held responsible, and Washington would frown upon any actions taken to upset or derail these talks. Does that put additional pressure on both Jerusalem and Ramallah?
Well, it really does. We haven't heard this type of language from a U.S. administration since the beginning of the peace process that began in 1993. However, I would raise the following question. When Israel was just accepted into the OECD, and the Palestinian Authority leadership actually made many phone calls trying to prevent Israel's acceptance into the OECD, and one has to wonder whether that was the first act to undermine confidence between the sides. In addition, there are other troubling signs coming from Israel's peace partners in Ramallah, and that is that Prime Minister Fayyad and Chairman Mahmoud Abbas have actually petitioned the UN Human Rights Council following the cast-led operation in Gaza, charging Israel with genocide, crimes against humanity, when it was actually they who partnered with Israel, as it were, to try to defeat the Hamas. And clearly there are other moves, such as going to the International Criminal Court and petitioning against Israel on the basis of crimes against humanity. So there have been these types of actions, delegitimizing actions taken by the Palestinian Authority that really seem to undermine confidence, yet Israel has not made that case to the international community, and the United States doesn't seem to be following up on it.
All right, we have about 30 seconds left, Dan. Quick question. Does George Mitchell have a U.S. peace plan in his pocket that the Obama administration wants to see enacted?
Well, certainly, as recently as 48 hours ago, it was reported this morning in the Israeli press that President Barack Obama met with the Jewish policymakers in the United States and said that he may well put forward his own principles of a plan in the coming months. It is my estimation we may well see a Barack Obama plan that would serve his political interest as he moves towards a very troubling period for him politically towards the November elections, where there is an assessment that that the administration may lose big, the Democrats may lose big, and he's got to throw a Hail Mary pass in order to try to make an impression on the international community and certainly his voting constituency. So I would assess there may well be some Obama plan or the principles of a plan in the coming 4 or 5 months.
Dan Diker, policy analyst with the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs. Thanks much, Dan.
Thank you.
Authorities in Thailand declared today that order has been restored in the capital, Bangkok, after a night of rioting. Nevertheless, the Foreign Ministry in Jerusalem is advising Israelis not to travel to Thailand, and those already there should avoid trouble spots in Bangkok and 23 other provinces. The government declared a state of emergency, and a curfew remains in effect for another 3 days. 14 people were killed and 91 others injured in this latest crackdown on red shirt protesters who have been staging demonstrations for 2 months demanding the ouster of the current Thai government. The government spokesman denounced the violent protest as criminal in nature.
Looting, set buildings on fire, arsenal activities that took place is not accepted, but we understand their frustration. But the violence that took place last night went beyond frustration. It is an organized crime. It is an organized terrorism. We are working very hard now to contain this act of violence.
We are the winner now. For all of the world, we are the winner. They know what is true, what is real. No, we not lose. We never lose. We can stack up again someday. Soon or not soon, I cannot say that, but we can stand up again.
And joining me now in the studio to discuss the situation in Thailand is Chaim Khoshin, the director of the Southeast Asia Desk at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Chaim, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Well, the Foreign Ministry has said they don't want Israelis traveling to Thailand right now, and yet travel agents and airlines are booking passengers and flying to Thailand. Is this a conflict of interest from your standpoint?
Well, let me correct you. We didn't issue a travel advisory which asks Israelis not to travel to Thailand. we told Israeli citizens to refrain, to avoid from traveling to the city of Bangkok, to the metropolitan of Bangkok, and to other 23 provinces where the Thai government has declared a state of emergency.
How many Israelis are currently in Thailand, and do you have a figure on how many might be in Bangkok at this moment?
Well, it's very difficult to say. We know, according to our statistics, that in a year, 120,000, between 120,000 to 140,000 Israelis are traveling to Thailand for tourism and other purposes. So we assume that in every moment in Thailand there might be a lot of thousands of Israelis, but it's impossible really to say the exact number of Israelis.
There's no policy that Israelis should check in with the embassy as they enter the country or when they leave?
Well, we cannot force Israeli citizens to check in with the embassy, but of course we recommend any Israeli who goes to Thailand to register, but practically not many Israelis are doing that.
Based on your assessment and what you're hearing at the Foreign Ministry, is the civil strife in Thailand nearing an end?
Well, it's very difficult for us to forecast. We consult also with with the Department of State and with other foreign ministries, and we learned that they also find it very difficult to focus what's going to be the next step of the Thai government, how it can evolve. Therefore, our advice is to be very cautious about the next moves.
The government still has in effect curfew for 3 more days.
That's true.
It sounds like they're just trying to be cautious in case there should be some more pockets of resistance somewhere along the way. Should Israelis who are contemplating going to Thailand maybe just postpone it for a few weeks or a month?
Yeah, this is exactly our advice, not to go to Bangkok, but we don't want to prevent Israelis to go, for example, to the southern islands where it's for the moment
But don't
quiet.
most planes land? Isn't that the destination? Most planes land in Bangkok flying from Israel? So they sort of have to go to Bangkok to get to the other locations.
Well, you're true. You're correct. Bangkok Airport is a hub for many destinations in Asia. Right now, the airport is open, and we don't advise to Israelis not to arrive to Bangkok Airport. We are fully aware to the fact that it's a hub, and actually we don't see any reason right now not to use this airport as a gateway to other destinations in the region.
Are there any other warnings that Israelis need to be aware of anywhere else in the world?
I'm in charge of the Asia region, so this question should be asked another.
All right, Chaim Choshen with the Foreign Ministry. Thanks so much for being with us.
You're most welcome. Thank you very much.
World powers denounced North Korea today for the sinking of a South Korean naval vessel that left 46 people dead. Japan's Prime Minister called it unforgivable. The White House described it as an unacceptable act of aggression, and it would only deepen North Korea's isolation. South Korea vowed to take stern measures against the North, but analysts say Seoul has very few options since China will probably not support UN action against its ally Pyongyang. In addition, North Korea threatened all-out war if there is any attempt made to punish it. A multinational investigation team announced today that following its probe into the March 26th incident, the evidence was overwhelming that a North Korean submarine fired a torpedo which sank the South Korean ship. Flooding in southern Poland has left at least 6 people dead, and thousands of residents are now being evacuated from the Sicilian region. 500 others were evacuated from Krakow, where the Vistula River has reached a 40-year high mark of 957 meters. It now endangers the infamous former Nazi death camp Auschwitz-Birkenau. The camp closed its doors on Monday after officials of the memorial site reported water on the floors of several barracks at the concentration camp, where 1.5 million people, mostly Jews, were murdered during the Holocaust. Auschwitz-Birkenau is in the area of Poland worst hit by the recent heavy rains, and the memorial site will remain closed until further notice. 4 people were remanded today on charges of illegal weapons possession after police in Migdal HaEmek discovered a large number of grenades during a routine search of a vehicle last night. The driver and 3 passengers of the car were pulled over after arousing suspicion of police, and the suspects range in age from 14 to 25. A subsequent search located the grenades as well as daggers. In other news, 2 female pedestrians were struck and killed by a car in Kiryat Yam earlier this morning. One of the women died on impact. An MDA team arrived at the scene and attempted to revive the second woman, but she succumbed to her injuries and was pronounced dead a short time later. Both women were from Haifa and in their 50s. The cause of the accident is still under investigation. Stock talk now. Share prices on the Tel Aviv Exchange declined today. The shekel was down in foreign currency trading. Let's take a look at the late afternoon numbers. And as we head toward the weekend, the IBA weather guy says tomorrow should be pleasant with slightly warmer temperatures. Here are the highs and lows. That's all for today. I'm Yochanan El Rom. Thanks for watching. Have a great evening, and shalom from Jerusalem. Thanks, guys.